And coming on the show, we've got Sean Mackiewicz. He's the editor-in-chief of Skybound Entertainment, an imprint of Image Comics. He edits, Sean, you edit just about every single...
A lot.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we have an editorial group of there's two other editors, John Moisen and Ariel Bassett, so they do a bunch of stuff. But yeah, I handle the majority of Robert's titles and our longer-running titles, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to, the Kirkman-created titles, you've also got, Birthright, you've got Redneck. I know of some other stuff up and around the bend. I know Layman's got a book coming with you guys soon. We've had him on the show for that. So, first off, welcome on to our fine little program.
Thank you.
And second off, how does one become the editor-in-chief of one of the largest, most visible? Because if, at the risk of sounding like a stalker, didn't you go to NYU to be a playwright?
Sure.
and here you are,
wow, digging deep, yeah. I originally went to NYU just because I wanted to go to school in New York City. And kind of I grew up in Massachusetts, a decent-sized town, and went to Boston, but going to New York was a whole new experience and really opened me up to other things. But yeah, I got into midway through. I got into the dramatic writing program and ended up falling in love with theater, and it's kind of informed my approach to editing. But yeah, it's been there's no straight path to being in this prestigious position that I'm currently in.
Well, in addition to just editing, the entire Skybound library, you're also the co-creator and writer of Gasolina, which is published through Skybound, which, for our listeners at home that may not be in the know, it's this blend of Sicario-level border action, but it's also full of monsters, and yet there's a love story and a family story at its core. So how does, you had mentioned there's no straight path from playwright to comic editing, and now comic writing. Were you always a fan of comics even before you started going to NYU and then before you broke into the business?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think some of my earliest memories, we had this kind of ragged, dog-eared Return of the Jedi comic book adaptation that was a paperback, and it started right when Luke starts going crazy on Jabba's skiff, and that's I missed my favorite part of Return of the Jedi was just missing from that. But there was a lot of toys in the 80s that came with comic books, and you'd get a Hostess cupcake, and they'd have some sort of weird Marvel Comics mashup with the Hulk and fit in a cupcake along the line. So there was always comic books with He-Man toys and all that. And I went to a birthday party and got a G.I. Joe comic book. And then once I realized then there was, comic cards, and that led me to a comic book store. And basically since the early 90s, I've been kind of reading comic books with only a couple phases where I kind of fell off. But yeah, no, I love comic books. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this job.
Sure, good.
I mean, it's. I don't know too many people, at least at Skybound, that work. I mean, all our editors here and our designers love comics. We don't love the same comics. There's a wide range of tastes, and I think that even my experience at DC, for the most part, at least in editorial, you had people that just really love comics. It's a tough job, and I mean, there's tougher jobs, but there's a grind to, there's a lot of material being released, and if you're not super engaged in it and want to work with these awesome creators month in, month out, then, there's probably better jobs for you. So it's just something I've always really enjoyed doing.
Well, I feel like the entire industry is a labor of love, but, again, Gasolina is kind of like a labor of love within a labor of love.
Sure, yeah. So, yeah, it's not like I do that during my regular daytime job, it's sort of something I do on the nights and weekends when I can. I have a family and a son, so coming back from this job, but it's something that if I can work on an hour or two where I can, it's something that I'm really engaged by. We work with, like I said, a ton of great creators, and to be able to create things with them and help them build was really inspiring for me to pursue something myself. So, I guess I'm not happy unless I'm just working all the time, anyways. So that helps me engage that.
What was it about this story? Was it something that you would this imagery, this genre blend you had always kind of had in your back pocket? Because, Skybound, you do stuff that isn't horror, but it is, would it be accurate to say that Skybound is predominantly horror?
I mean, we do. I think we classify it as just solid genre material with strong characters and twists along the way. But I think probably a third of our line at times is horror or has horror influences. Obviously Walking Dead and Outcast, but we've done Ghosted and Redneck, and even something like Demonic, which is a miniseries, has like a lot of horror in there, and even stuff like Manifest Destiny, which is a historical action adventure piece. I think that there's a large part of horror in that as well. So it's just something that I think readers enjoy, and something that I've grown to enjoy, and just I didn't grow up as specifically a horror fanatic, but I think horror helps you kind of tell these personal stories and up the stakes pretty naturally.
Yeah, you were mentioning like 80s toys and stuff earlier. I'm not that much younger than you. I remember getting the Kenner toys and, very much kind of growing up in the age of Freddy Krueger and that sort of thing, because he was everywhere when I was a kid, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you go into the video store and they have these huge standees of him or Jason. So it was like a very confrontational atmosphere trying to get to the kids section, which was never at the front of the store.
Yeah.
You had to walk this gauntlet of Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then like Freddy and Jason and Critters and stuff like that. So there was, a lot of my early horror experiences scared the hell out of me, so it kind of made me avoid it for a while. And it wasn't probably until the mid to late 90s that I kind of got re-engaged, but it's something I enjoy a lot now. And I guess like for where Gasolina started, I've always been kind of interested in kind of like the Mexican drug cartel just from a outside distance, really fascinating and horrific situation. So it felt natural that that's already a horror story, and how do we ramp it up a little bit so that it starts off as, like you said, Sicario, and ends up kind of veering more into Hellboy, as the series progresses.
Yeah, you had mentioned Demonic earlier, which was illustrated by Nico. Is that kind of what brought him on your radar for Gasolina?
Yeah, we met at WonderCon years ago. He just kind of came up with his portfolio, and he's the only artist that I think I've met that showed me his portfolio that I've hired. It's just tough. I don't think as many artists approach kind of getting hired at conventions as they used to, since you can post your portfolio digitally at any time. But yeah, we had met, and when I opened it up, it was pretty clear that his storytelling was really advanced for someone that hadn't worked a lot. So yeah, we had hired him on Demonic, and by the end of it, I really enjoyed working with him. He's super professional and just like isn't afraid to throw in his own ideas, and I think his approach to covers. I think he's just got a great brain for it. I mean, whenever we work out with covers, he throws out, at least in the early days, he'd throw like a dozen different takes, and you're like, oh. So when we were doing the first Gasolina cover, he threw out probably 12, 15 takes, and we've used over half of them on different covers along the way. It just was, he kind of really took the concept and ran with it. But yeah, he's fantastic. I really enjoy working with him he's been instrumental in kind of building out the creature design and the look and feel of this world. It's great.
Yeah, no, it's a gorgeous book, and it's well written too, of course.
Well, we also have Matt Lopez, who came on Colors, who was he came recommended by Matt Wilson, and I'd seen his work before, and it just ended up being that he was available when it started, and again, pretty instrumental in how that book looks, and they're just we're behind the scenes. We're working on issues 15 and 16 right now. We're ahead of schedule, so it's everything's like well oiled, and everyone kind of knows, especially midway through the second arc, like exactly the book that we were doing and how to do it the best way. I hope.
Yeah. Would you say that working that far ahead, kind of, and having everything so tightly mapped, is kind of indicative of a more editorial background? Like you had, worked the game so long behind the scenes that that you want to keep the machine running, as smoothly as possible?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of our approach in everything. I mean, like you said, we have a new book by John Layman and Apu Chan, which we're actually sending to press this week. It'll be out the first week of November. We have 6 issues of that done. John's written 10 so far. It's just, we want to be confident that when we launch a book, there's a strong sample, 2 or 3 issues to show to retailers, so that they know what they're investing in. and then be able to publish that monthly, take usually a month off for the first trade, and then kind of come back monthly and keep that rolling as fast as possible. That's something that Robert really asked us to do since I came here. And it used to be kind of a couple issues, but now, since we've gotten so good at it, and just want to make sure that, we're performing high, it ends up being kind of, since Oblivion Song, almost a full arc of a series will be done. I think that allows us to kind of create stories in the manner that we want to, and don't feel pressure from outside to kind of change our direction or influence things, so that, through success or failure, the creators are getting to tell the stories that they really want to tell.
You were mentioning like having, things for retailers and everything, and for readers available. How did the surprise launch? Because you don't really see that much these days, certainly not for, for like an image book or something. Though I'm always surprised how like small image staff, like the image staff is. But how did you stage like the surprise launch of Die Die Die?
Through a lot of trial and error. It's something. Honestly, like, you have to, because when you're creating a new system and doing something that hasn't been done before, maybe for a very good reason, I don't know, but it was Robert's at the part of his career where when he launches a new series, it's automatically a big deal. So he's always looking for wrinkles on how to make it more special, and how to, do different formats or different release strategies. And we had begun working on Die 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 around the same time as Oblivion Song, because we always knew roughly that they would probably come out in the same year. And so Oblivion Song was something that we did a lot for. He went on Seth Meyers, and we printed up trades of the first series. So it was funny the follow-up series we do kind of nothing for, and we knew that the impact of a surprise, there's not many creators, I think, that could come out with a series like this and kind of grab that much attention. But it's something that when he came up with the idea and we finally realized with Die Die Die, we started talking with image staff, and it took, I think 6 months talking with them and Diamond, really how to do this and troubleshooting and coming up with a plan, and then poking holes in that plan and figuring out a new approach. So, it was just a lot of conversation. Eric Stevenson, Corey Murphy, over at Image especially, and then, our Diamond rep, and here, Robert and Sean Kirkham, who's our SVP of Business Development. I think it's something we've all been invested in, because at the same time of launching this book, Sean was working with Robert to develop action figures of the two main characters of a book that no one's ever read. So it was ambitious, and it was fun to kind of finally have it public, and it didn't. I think news might have leaked maybe the late Monday or Tuesday the day before. So that was kind of when we figuring, it'd been impossible for books to just be on stands Wednesday without having some retailer or comic store employee kind of blow the whistle. But that was fine. That was intentional, so that we had other press and press releases ready to roll out.
Yeah, always get that bleeding cool like tabloid journalism.
Yeah, we knew it would be on Bleeding Cool first, but that's fine, I think they had probably 4 or 5 different articles about that in 48 hours, so that's it's kind of doing its job.
Yeah, got it. I mean, what's the old adage? No, all press is good press, something like that. So
maybe I don't know if that's true, but but also, I mean, part of it was the surprise that this book is out there, but they weren't really stepping on the story that much, so it still was up for readers to kind of go through and see Chris Burnham and Nathan Fairbairn's awesome art, and we've kind of stuck with that plan ever since. I'm always hesitant to talk about Die 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 because we're far enough ahead that I don't want to reveal something that I'm not supposed to.
Sure.
But we're still keeping upcoming covers. We're not showing them online until the issue's in stores. It's kind of settled into a regular schedule. We feel like that was best for retailers and customers to kind of know when to find us the last week of every month. Mm-hmm. And we have issue 4 is about to hit, or just hit stores. I don't know, somewhere around there. It hits stores next week or 2 weeks. I don't know. Soon, very soon.
Of course, keep an eye out, listeners. But the something.
Well, we had a printing error on that one, so it delayed printing to like the first week of November. I don't know when this comes out. So
right. So it'll be out before this episode will be out before Halloween. But the in terms of you guys just finished New York Comic Con. I think one of the biggest announcements right after was the creation of Skybound Galactic. I was wondering if that, if you have any role with that branch of Skybound, or are you more entirely with the publishing branch of it all?
No, I mean, I guess some of the benefit of being at Skybound for so long, I've been here for just over 6 years, is, seeing a company grow from what was a handful of people to over 90, and kind of being able to pursue these new opportunities with Skybound Galactic. Rick Jacobs, who oversees that with, Robert and David Alpert, has kind of been in the Skybound orbit for a while, and, I can't speak too much on what they're doing there, but, I don't have an active role aside from just kind of being support when I need to. And it's fun to kind of work at a company in which you have a comic book division. I also manage Skybound Books through Simon & Schuster, which is a publishing imprint. And then there's development, film and TV, and then this new TV studio. It's crazy. There's all sorts of cool stuff to work on throughout the day.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, from going to these shows and everything, like the Skybound, you guys are always, there's always something new, but it's never just one thing. I feel like you're spinning so many plates, and it's not a particularly large, it's big as far as creator-owned goes, but Image Central, Top Cow, Skybound, none of you guys are particularly all that large, and you've got so many different projects.
Yeah. At least on the publishing side, it's pretty manageable. We do 10 to 12 books a month. There's a lot more in development, but, miniseries go away, ongoing series succeed and fail. So we always have, a couple new projects, and we can be patient to know what we're publishing, the next 24 months or so. But yeah, there was times in which, honestly, there was 3 full-time employees plus the 2 owners of the company. That's when I joined. So I felt like I was doing more outside of my job then, but now I get to do a lot of just fun, creative stuff. I've been working on the Walking Dead brand for, sorry to call it a brand, a comic, but also Robert's so busy that I get to step in and work on video games and kind of just naturally accumulate a lot of unnecessary knowledge about The Walking Dead, and can be of assistance around here a lot of the time. So, yeah.
That's just, you've got
there's a lot. No, there's a lot going on at all time. I think anyone that you talk to will say that, especially around con season, New York kind of ends that, and we kind of go into the fallow period of wrapping up books at the end of the year, and then we ramp up again at Emerald City, which is my favorite show. But yeah, there's always a lot of stuff. And San Diego conventions are definitely seem to be the tentpole of the year, and that one is I always say it's like a wedding. We're planning a wedding every year, and there's just a lot of shit that needs to happen every year. So
yeah, no, and while I got you on, I'd like to take the opportunity to apologize again for kind of ghosting you a bit at New York. I remember trying to get to the back to
we have to make that public. I don't know why you're making that public now. I was just going to ignore it.
Well, just so everybody knows that because it was you were mentioning that Emerald City is your favorite show. It probably is for me too, in that it's the only show where I get to breathe.
Sure. But that show's crazy. I don't know, how long have you been going to that show? Emerald
City, I've been doing it since 2014.
Okay. Yeah, so I think my first year was a year before that, and it's a wonderful city, but that crowd has increased every year, and it's become just as big as those other 2 shows I mentioned. And I think it's the first show of the year, so I think people are just kind of super excited to kind of get out there at the end of winter and kind of talk to awesome artists and buy some books. That's what I always dig about it. It's got a good crowd too.
Yeah, no, it's like one of the last almost pure comic book shows in the country, which I always dug about that. But
yeah,
Sean, something we ask everybody that comes on our show: what are you currently geeking out over?
What am I currently geeking out over? Good Lord. Well, it is always my default answer, but I always love catching up. I just got a new trade of Kaiju Max by Xander Cannon and Oni Press, and I think that book is fantastic. I think it's like, a handful of books that just give you, kind of make you feel uneasy and unsure about where the story's going and the amount of dread. And, you put these, kaiju into prison and playing by prison rules. It's just profoundly, upsetting at times, under the guise of like this really cartoony exterior. But like as someone that's, seen every episode of Oz, it feels like you just put kaiju in the middle of Oz and you're like, that sounds horrific, and it definitely is.
Yeah.
So that's a really wonderful book.
There is, if we're talking genre blends, whoever, that's just a genius idea that I don't think anybody else could have come up with, right?
No, it's tough to I've handed that book to people and then they just hand it back to me once they've read a little bit and they're like, nah, that's not for me. So I don't necessarily think it's for everyone, but I'm really glad that Xander is working on the next miniseries right now.
Since you mentioned kaiju, I'm contractually obligated to ask, who is your favorite kaiju? Is it Godzilla or Gamera?
I'm not even a huge kaiju fan. I think that's the weird thing. Godzilla is, I think, definitely the most iconic. And if you ask me this question in a year, I may have a new Skybound appropriate answer for this, but yeah, I don't know. I think Godzilla just being the most iconic. I'm looking forward to that new movie. It's always good when they do something, kind of crazy with him. But yeah, it's not my fandom.
Not your bag. I remember they used to have the every Saturday morning they used to show it on the Sci-Fi Channel. You would get one or two Japanese Godzilla movies, and I closely Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, where with King Caesar,
yeah.
They wake him up with a song, and then he gets his ass kicked. That was the entire plot. Yeah. I identify a lot with that character.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Sci-fi. That was back. They have odd programming now, but yeah, they used to do that, and then they'd go into anime movies on a Saturday morning, and there was always some weirdness on there. Yeah,
that was the gateway into Akira too. Yeah, that was a whole thing. But Sean,
sure, yeah.
But before I let you go back to the wilds of Los Angeles, is there anything you can tease, not just about the future of Skybound, but within the pages of Gasolina? It looks like there's some sort of cartel war coming in Veracruz.
Well, thank you for setting me up. Well, we just came out. The second trade is out on sale now, so it collects through 12. And yeah, we've been brewing the whole time for not only a cartel war between this cartel that uses monsters, Los Queridos, but this other cartel that they tried to assassinate the leader of El Dorado. But I'm still kind of at the core of it, telling the story of Randy and Amalia, these newlyweds, or they've been married for 2 years at this point, so not newlyweds, kind of just figuring out what their relationship is and raising kids in this crazy ass situation. But for other things that I'm excited about that also tangentially involve kaiju, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Murder Falcon, which we just released a couple weeks ago by Daniel Warren Johnson, which is a crazy kung fu metal book. Dan's just a truly special creator that came aboard with us with Extremity. I think really kind of surprised people. He'd been around on some cool work on Ghost Fleet with Donny Cates and his own book Space Mullet, but then I think Extremity just really caught people unaware, which is this Mad Max meets Miyazaki is the easiest way to explain it. He was nominated for an Eisner, and now he's back with a new series, and I think it's a good antidote to a lot of the pain and strife people are feeling in the world right now. At least if comics are escapism, but there's also a huge amount of heart here and about humans connecting and listening to heavy metal and kicking some monsters' asses. What else could you want?
I actually was writing for Image Plus right around the time Extremity was solicited, and I got to interview Daniel for Extremity, and that's the emotional book. There's a lot of catharsis and rawness. The fun book, you were kind of alluding, is definitely Murder Falcon.
we were just discussing today. We've gotten a tremendous amount of letters on the first issue in just 1 week of release, and I think we're actually seeing the same kind of letters, oddly, in that with Extremity, it's like, hey, I went through this, and this is why I can appreciate your book, because Thea is also going through a lot of heavy stuff, and I've been through that. And Murder Falcon's like, hey, man, I'm going through some heavy stuff. Murder Falcon allows me to escape that. And we're like, Dan I don't know, Dan speaks to people. He's like I said, he's one of the, a great human being and also a tremendous artist that's just kind of starting to take off. And I hope I get to work with him for many years to come.
Yeah, he's just the nice.
He's also doing music he also plays guitar, so for every issue we're releasing a new song online. And he's got a Bandcamp started up. So if you're interested in that, you can find that on Skybound or Dan's Twitter. But yeah, he's doing music for the fictional band in the book who's called Bruticus. So, yeah.
Do you have a favorite metal band?
Do I have a favorite metal band? Oh God, if I say who I'm thinking, then people will say they're probably not even metal. So I'll just say that Dan's the metal head. I'm the hip hop head on this one. So if we ever do a hip hop influence book, then I can spend an hour talking about that stuff. But metal is Dan's domain.
Fair enough. Well, again, keep an eye out for Gasolina Volume 2. Any number of Skybound books, including Murder Falcon, if you're looking for just the most kick-ass, that book is just a hell of a...
It's fun. It's fun.
If you want, super jacked Falcon men listening to heavy metal...
with bionic arms.
Yeah.
Drinking beer. Yeah. We're also naturally doing heavy metal variants in each one, so working with some of our favorite artists, like Paul Pope and Andre Bresson, who does Birthright, and a bunch of other folks that we'll be announcing soon to do homages to their favorite metal albums, which just feels right.
It's so good, man. It's so good. Well, Sean, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.